go young there, and you knew you were going to have some bumps that you're going to have to deal with.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it leads to some very serious problems for your offense. For me, that is hindsight now. That is hindsight for me, but when I look back around this season, I look back and say that's the point that broke the season for the Cowboys.
So, I have a very specific point as well, but I might be kind of rethinking it just a little bit. So,
okay.
I think I've changed my mind. I was going to say the injury to Micah. Because, I broke it down like this. I mean, you weren't great in those first 4 games, and you were giving up 26 points a game, which, again, not great. They held up fine against the Steelers, but the next 3 games before Micah came back, the Cowboys gave up 34.7 points per game. So their defense is getting smashed. They started 2-2, went 1-3 without Micah, as well as the others. I know other people left, but it did seem like going back several years, Micah turned this defense from one of the worst defenses we've ever seen to, hey, this is totally acceptable.
You still felt like you could get some pressure, and you have not seen what you expected at all.
I agree. But I changed my mind to one specific sequence of plays. It was kicking a field goal against the Detroit Lions. All right. Now, were they probably going to get worked in that game? Well, I can look back at it now and say, oh, that feels like a logical takeaway. But the Cowboys hadn't scored a touchdown on the first drive all season. And they are moving. 1st and 10 at the Detroit 18. Short pass to CD gets you 2 yards. Then an incompletion, then another incompletion, and you settle for a field goal. So instead of finally starting a game with a touchdown to get the momentum going, you start for a field goal. What happens then? You get outscored the rest of the game 47-6. And that is where it all fell apart, because not only did you get worked in that game, then you lost to San Francisco, you lost to Atlanta, and you make a pretty strong argument that game wasn't as close as the final score, and then you got demolished by Philadelphia. These Cowboys were holding on by a string, but they had won a game against Pittsburgh that they out-toughed their opponent, which is something the Cowboys never or rarely do. They did that on the road against what now looks like a better Steelers team, and then you were 3-2. And then you come out against the Lions, who we all thought was a really good team, settle for the field goal, and everything since then has been pretty much crap.
And wouldn't you say, because of that kind of a beatdown, Dak Prescott's trying to make up for it?
I'm sure.
With his legs, and that's something that he couldn't do this year.
Yes.
He probably shouldn't have been doing this year. Even though everybody was like, you have to. You have to be able to escape at some point or, as Mike's pointed out many times, throw the ball away in those situations.
That is where I wish it would happen. But I see a lot of people saying before the season.
All in?
Yeah, man.
So a lot of people kind of marketed it back to Green Bay last year in the playoffs. Is whenever this season was lost, because at that point, they can't make them better. Although it's just weird how that game went and ended, and they didn't. They let coaches go. They let players go. They didn't add any other players to make up for those losses on their depth front.
Mike, did you have
I've thought about it. Probably the exact moment would be when Dak got hurt.
Okay.
Because I can look at it this. Yeah, the Saints game. That was a big-time warning sign.
It was.
And then they ended up a few weeks later beating the Giants. It was an ugly win, but they beat the Giants. But then they beat the Steelers, and you're like, you know what? This is Dak Prescott-led Cowboys team. He's not good enough to get you far in the playoffs, but he is good enough to figure out how to win 10 games.
And get you to the playoffs.
And that's who Dak Prescott is. But then you get killed by Detroit, and you're thinking, well, that's fine. That's what Dak does. He gets killed by good teams. That's his career. Now let's look at the games where you should win, but the injury now, you know that you can't beat average teams anymore. You're going to lose to the average teams. You're going to get destroyed by the good teams.
I
maybe you beat the Giants. Maybe you beat Carolina still, but I guess I look at it and go, hey, there was a lot of warning signs. I think you guys pointed out some really great things with the defensive injuries. But once Dak got hurt, that's the finish. Like, best case scenario, they go 6-11, and they ain't going. I don't think they're going 6-11. I just think that's best case if you're hoping for them to win games.
From the 8-0-8, when your owner didn't know the difference between all in and not doing anything. From the 6-8-2, when Zeke came back. And the reason I wanted to spotlight those two is because there's a lot of people that are like, no. It was before the season started, as opposed to a moment in the season. But in the season, from the 2-4, when you couldn't score against the Saints. Mike's right. That was a big warning sign, too. And that's when I thought the Saints were going to be really good. And then they turned out to be freaking terrible.
You don't know that?
Well, thus far, they have been freaking terrible.
They won their last one with the new head coach.
They did. But be honest, why do you love that new head coach?
He clogged a toilet. And he said, I don't feel like a real NFL coach right now because he clogged a toilet right before the first game he ever coached. I think that's hilarious.
That's a lot of information from him. Now, another thing that's come up, and people can give, more inflection points, absolutely. But another thing I keep looking at is Mike McCarthy keeps talking about the turnover ratio and is like, oh, it makes me sick. The Cowboys have given the ball away 18 times. That's the third highest in the NFL. Guess what? They have a minus 10 turnover ratio. Cowboys were plus 10 last year and tied for the second fewest turnovers in the NFL. The Cowboys have already turned the ball over more this year than all of last year.
Yeah, how sick do you think he was after Zeke's fumble at the goal line? And I say
that was bad.
I say that specifically because, and I don't know, I just feel like he wasn't the one raising his hand saying, please bring Zeke back.
Probably not.
But he's like, I have to play this guy because he's on the team and I need to get carries. And goal line is why we brought him back. We brought him back for these situations. And then he runs and fumbles the ball at the goal line. Specifically for that situation, that's why he's here. And he adds to that differential right there. A lot of people, Kevin, they were bringing up Dak's contract as the moment that it was the backbreaker, and I'm curious.
I don't think for this season, but I agree with this. If you're saying
hasn't even kicked in yet,
this is my opinion. That destroyed hope for the next 4 years. You're done. You cannot win with him on that contract and the talent that he is.
Okay,
he just isn't good enough. He's good, but at that money, he cannot carry a team, and you can't put the pieces around him to make it the team you need.
And if there was anything in the locker room that was like, hey, maybe there's a chance that one day we'll have a different quarterback. Yeah, it doesn't exist anymore.
You thought he was slow now. Wait till he comes back from this injury.
Yeah, and I know Mickey's right. There's nothing you can do to change about it now, but I just think about, Jerry said, everybody's all in. People are on the last year of their contracts, both players and coaches. And then right before the start of the season, the guy who said, I don't necessarily care about being the highest paid quarterback, gets the most in the NFL by $5 million. And I heard what Mickey said earlier, that his team would much rather have a bidding war out on the open market. I can absolutely see that. But now you can look at it and you're like, I don't know, the Cowboys might have done the same thing. He got hurt the last time he was in the last year of his contract, and they're like, oh, let's give you all the money anyway. So when they so far surpassed the most money in the NFL for their quarterback, and they had such a huge bill still coming on him. Remember, his cap hit next year is $90 million, just about.
Okay.
Now, I know they got $20 million to carry over. They can keep pushing money down the road because that'll never come back to bite them again. You haven't even seen this contract kick in yet. If you're mad now, it hasn't even started.
What if he was saying...
Hey guys, you just heard it from 105.3 The Fan. That's from the KC Masterpiece. On their take of the Cowboys season so far, I've been saying this for the past 9 months. Everything that they've been saying, I've been saying this. Before the season started, the team building, when Jerry, Steven, they didn't bring anybody in. They didn't fix the defense. You just, Zimmer is just duct tape. It takes at least 3 to 4 seasons for drafting to bring his type of players in. You did not draft a running back. You heard him talking about Zeke. The contract. Dak Prescott contract. Enough said. 4 years? Yeah. This team is trash, especially with that contract. And it haven't even kicked in yet. And y'all still expect Jared to know what the hell he doing? Oh, yeah. Thank God we got college football. Yeah, until the fans at the game decide to walk out, nothing's going to change.